I used to think Bigfoot was a myth. Who could blame me? After all, how could anyone take a name as dumb as Bigfoot seriously? That's like calling a snake no legs or a bear fairy thing. Whoever came up with its other name, Sasquatch, can piss right off too, but at least it's better than Bigfoot. That's probably why my friend Max was so insistent on calling it a Sasquatch instead of a Bigfoot. He must have thought that it made him sound like just a tiny bit less ridiculous whenever he ran it to me and our friends about how he intended to find it one day. What he intended to do with it once he actually found it, none of us ever bothered to ask. We just thought he was a nutty guy who'd be searching for it as long as he lived without results. He was like a dog chasing a car in that respect, always fearlessly running towards their elusive goal for reasons that they themselves cannot fully explain. And just like a dog, it didn't end well for him when he finally did catch up with that car. I was a university student studying zoology in America when it happened. Max was one of the students who shared the same major as me, so we shared more than a few classes. He was a decent enough student, dare I say maybe even a great one, if he put in a little bit more elbow grease into his actual studies instead of his passion projects. Then he could have easily gotten a letter of recommendation for a master's degree. He would have become a respectable member of the conventional scientific community had he done that. But I get the feeling that that was never really something he wanted. From what I could tell from the 2 years I've known him, his sole interest lay in esoteric areas of study that could hardly be considered proper science by those who worked in more well-threaded fields of research. His specialization of choice was the dubious science of cryptozoology. So to put it quite simply, he was a bit of a loon. On the first day I arrived at the university, fresh off the airplane with the dark cloud of the British weather still floating over my head, Max approached me after class to ask about what London was like. At first, I was expecting the usual overly curious, arrogant American questions that would border on annoying if they weren't so amusing. Stuff like, do you drink tea every day? Or does it really rain all the time there? Or, hey, what do you call insert random everyday item here in Britain? So when he instead asked me if I knew of any British cryptids, he immediately stood out to me from everyone else. I told him about the Beast of Bodmin Moor, a giant phantom cat monster thing that appeared on the news every now and then because of a new sighting in Cornwall. I never really bought into the idea of it being a phantom, but found the possibility that it might have been an escaped foreign wildcat roaming the English countryside interesting enough that I kept up with the news on it in my free time. One thing conversation to another, and we became fast friends alongside a small group of fellow introverts and weirdos. Sure, he was a few biscuits short of a tea party. There's no denying that. But he was a nice guy, and as nutty as the stuff he talked about was, it was still interesting to listen to, which is more than I can say for most of the other people there who spoke with all the rationality of a supercomputer and all the passion of sleep-deprived sloths. Unfortunately for him, that very passion was also the thing that discredited him in the eyes of all the professors and peers. Any possibility of him ever being taken seriously was snuffed away the moment he let everyone know that he believed in the animal that everyone else thought they knew to be a myth. Max liked to say that he didn't care what they thought, but I could tell he craved to be taken seriously by them. It came as no surprise to me when he gathered a group of his closest friends, me included, for a camping trip in the woods during our break ostensibly, to get away from the busy city and relax in nature. We all knew better than to believe that, though. A quick Google search revealed that there had recently been a Bigfoot sighting in the forest Max had suggested we go camping in. And like all Bigfoot sightings, it was a little more than a blurry photo taken at a distance with a camera that must have been bought from a senior citizen's garage sale. Still, it didn't matter. I think we were all just happy to have an excuse to hang out with each other during the break instead of being bored while waiting for the next semester to start. The first couple of days were fine. We stuck to the trail laid out to us by the park rangers and goofed around as people our age tend to do. It was shaping up to be the perfect camping trip. But then Max suggested we go off the beaten path in the forest. Our friends were open to the idea, hoping to find a little bit more excitement after 2 days of uneventfully sleeping on the dirt. I was hesitant with the idea, worried that we'd get lost and not be able to find our way back. But Max came prepared and pulled out a ball of string so that we could mark our path as we explored. I have to admit, I admired his creativity and ultimately caved in. We didn't plan to be off the trail for more than a single night, but ended up staying out there for a couple of days more after stumbling upon a field of wildflowers that got the botanist in our group all sorts of excited. According to her, they were non-native flowers that shouldn't be able to grow there. She insisted that we explored the area a bit more in case we stumbled across some more revelation that could earn us some brownie points with the scientific community. Max obviously didn't care about any of that, but he took it as an excuse to keep looking for his precious Bigfoot. Looking back, finding unnatural flowers growing from an unexplored part of the forest was probably a red flag. At that time, I was just excited for an opportunity to make a name for myself while still only a student. I agreed without hesitation, and we went deeper into the forest like lambs to the slaughter. On our last night there, Max woke me up from my sleep to ask me to walk with him. I immediately knew what it was about when I saw the night vision camera in his hand. Annoyed but impressed at the lengths he was going to for his white whale, I agreed to join him. He told me to bring the only shotgun we rented from the park ranger too, just in case. Oddly enough, despite being the only Brit in the group of Americans, I was the only person with any semblance of experience with firearms. Growing up in Yorkshire countryside, I often shot birds for dinner with my uncle. I might not be the best shot out there, but I could shoot straight enough. I walked with Max deeper into the woods, keeping watch for bears and other non-cryptid predators whenever he stopped to tie a string to a branch to mark our path. He kept making what he called Sasquatch mating calls. That made him look and sound like a mentally ill orangutan in an attempt to lure out the Bigfoot. After about 3 hours of Max making a fool of himself and me trying to hold back my laughter, we finally decided to call it a night and return to camp. But when we tried to return the way we came, we found that the string had been cut and removed only a kilometer or so behind us. We tried our best to find our way back, but only succeeded to get ourselves more lost. We were dehydrated and starving on the forest floor 3 days later. We were gathered around a campfire Max made with his lighter when I saw it. Coming out of the trees, with dark matted fur and standing well over 7 feet tall. Bigfoot, or as Max preferred to call him, Sasquatch. The bloody bastard was smiling, showing off yellowed teeth stained by what I can only assume was blood. Max saw it too. His eyes widened in a mix of wonder and fear, but the dehydration and starvation had taken its toll on him. He couldn't even muster the strength to hold up his camera as it slowly approached him with massive hands open, ready to grab him. Looking into his eyes, I could immediately tell that they weren't the eyes of an animal acting out of instinct. Any other animal would either attack right away or test the waters by quickly nipping and retreating first. This thing was fully confident in its ability to kill us and was taking its sweet time purely for its own sadistic satisfaction. I put 2 and 2 together and realized that it must have intentionally cut the strings we were using to track ourselves so it could tire us out before the kill. Luckily for us, fear is one hell of an adrenaline rush. The moment I realized that we were dealing with an intelligent, calculating killer, the fear that flooded my body gave me just enough adrenaline for my weakened body to raise the shotgun and fire off a shot. I missed, but the buckshot hit a nearby tree that was close enough to the Bigfoot to frighten it. I could see genuine fear in its eyes when it realized that I still had the strength to shoot, and it ran straight back into the forest. Good thing too, because I don't think I could have handled the recoil of another shot. We were found by the hikers who heard my gunshot about an hour later. Although we both made a full physical recovery, Max hasn't been the same since. Finding out what happened to our friends after we left them without a shotgun didn't help. Though their bodies weren't found, there was enough blood staining their abandoned equipment to deem them dead. Authorities say that it was a bear, but I know better. And it was no coincidence that the Bigfoot only attacked when I took their only gun away from the camp. Max's belief in the Sasquatch is stronger than ever, but now he wants to kill it instead of study it. He set out to that very forest shortly after he recovered with a bag filled with camping supplies and guns. That was 10 years ago. Search parties only found trace amounts of his blood spattered over a bed of wildflowers that weren't native to the area. I don't know how his encounter with Bigfoot went down, and I don't think I ever will. But one thing's for sure, I'm never going back to America again.